Welcome to Indie Beacon Radio, where creative souls can find help in marketing their creations. You can send questions for each show on Twitter using the hashtag IndieBeacon. Now sit back and enjoy learning about our guest for this show.
Good evening, y'all. This is radio show host, model, and awarded children's book author, Shanalee Sharboneau, but that's not the cool thing. The cool thing is we've got a very interesting author this evening by the name of Carolyn B Leonard. Welcome, Carolyn.
Glad to be here. Nice to meet you, Shanalee.
Oh man, no, it's great. Let me tell you, we had a great conversation, at least on the phone. And you are quite interesting. You are a person who has done a lot of work in genealogy. You do have an upcoming book. We're going to get to that next, called The First 100 Years. But what's really crazy is I think we're all into this genealogy, ancestry thing. But you've taken it a whole step further. Like, you've been able to really, help people get their background and understand where their family came from, even though they think they've done all the research. So can you tell me a little bit about why you got into this and how you kind of came to this point this evening?
Well, my dad became ill with cancer, and we didn't know much about his family. So he and I worked together on getting down in writing, and I had him record a lot because I was working full-time and had small children. So I gave him a recorder, and then every day I'd work on what he had recorded. And he was not at all the last of the line. We finally learned he had lots of cousins that we didn't know about, and ancestors that we're very proud of that we hadn't known about before.
Interesting. So that fueled your fire to really go into your own genealogy, correct?
Yes. By the time we finished with that and he had passed away, I was hooked on genealogy. That's the most popular hobby in the United States right now.
That's interesting. And you said something on our conversation that once you get into this, you don't sleep. And I do have a sister-in-law. She's quite a bit older than I am. And my husband was kind of that oops on child 4. And she's come to me and probably, I think as you get older, it becomes more important too. And she came to me, and she didn't sleep for a week. And I'm like, how could you not sleep for a week? But, here's the cool thing. You and I were talking about this. How can people start, and where do they start? And kind of as you go through this transition, what are the pitfalls that kind of stop people that might tell them, okay, I don't know, this is the end of the line, I don't know how to go further. So can you that's quite a bit of information, but kind of walk us through getting started and what to expect?
Well, of course, the first thing I tell people when they say, I don't know how to start, I wouldn't know where to begin, I say, well, the first thing you need to do is get my book, Who's Your Daddy? And that'll tell you how to begin. And it even takes you on through writing your family history, which is your goal when you begin, so that you can share it with others. So you start with yourself. It's very important. You may have heard, like we did in our family, we had the legend that we were related to John and Abigail Adams somehow. So that was one of the things we really researched, and it turned out not to be true at all. But if I had started with John Adams and started doing his descendants and moving down that way, it would have been a hopeless task. So you have to start with yourself. And there's a form in my book that you can download from the website. I call it the roadmap. It's I think it's 6 generations of your family. You fill that out. Then you take that with you whenever you go somewhere to research, because you have the important information with you. And the fun of genealogy then is, as you learn where they lived at a certain period, to go to that place. We've been all over the United States visiting places where the ancestors had lived, and it's just been a wonderful experience.
I could imagine that. I was blessed with immigrant grandparents from Ireland, and I've been once, we're going again in July, and my grandfather actually pulled a cornerstone out of a bridge so the English would not traverse over to Southern Ireland, and I was able to go in. And you are correct. I mean, I heard that story all my life, but when you're standing there and you actually see the stone pulled out, and he stopped because they actually ran down and said, that's okay. They kicked their batooties way, they're not coming, which they did. But, to see that stone pull out, and I think there's more there. And I just think that's great. That's great advice. Go there, soak it in, try to find people, and especially with all this ancestry stuff, you can actually look up relatives that live in that area. I mean, it's just nuts. So, this is a personal experience, and you actually mentioned this before, is where to get this information and
7 o'clock.
What pitfalls to not get into. So for instance, I've got a really easy name. Everybody can spell it correctly, Sharboneau. Kidding. So what happens to names, and where do you go for that information to continue that process from you?
Oh, from yourself?
Yes.
Well, you can look around and you'll find that you have a lot of the information that you had forgotten about. For instance, the family Bible usually has a lot of information in it. The older generations, that's the only place you can find it, because before they started keeping civil records. I'm trying to remember back to when I first started. Your birth certificate, your marriage certificates, you won't have a death certificate yet, but for your parents or your grandparents,
I'm working on it.
There's a lot of information on each one of those pieces of paper that'll usually lead you to the next generation.
Wow. And what about, you had mentioned something called a consensus. What is that about?
Census.
The
census is every 10 years, back to 1790. And so you can see the census. Many of them are online, or if you're a member of Ancestry.com, you can look at it at home. If you don't have a computer and aren't able to look at it at home, go to any public library and you can use it free there. Ancestry is a little expensive for some people, and but you can go to a library and use it free. And as you read the census, you learn who was living. Say we look at 1850, which is the first census that names everybody in the family. So you learn the head of the household's name, and the wife, and the children, and maybe aunts, uncles, grandparents. So you get all that information from the census, and then each year, each 10 years, there's more information in the census.
I think there is a government website too. I think if you just Google, census, you can download, because they've been, putting these documents, and I think they've connected it to, the programs that cost money. So if you want a free route, you might be able to find that. So one of the things that is kind of hard to do in the census, though, is what happens. I mean, even Leonard could have gotten misspelled, or Sharboneau, or whatever. How do you do that? I mean, what happened? Are those names correctly spelled? Are they not?
No, many times they're not, because in those early years, maybe the person themselves didn't know how to spell their name. But even if they did, the census taker may have just spelled it phonetically, may have asked them their name and then just wrote down how they thought it was spelled to save time. And also sometimes in those early censuses, if the people weren't at home, they just ask a neighbor who lived there and who was in the family. So,
and I so appreciate that piece of information, because one of the things that allowed my husband to continue is just that. He thought, just for a second, he thought, what if Sharboneau was misspelled? It's not an easy name. And he did a phonetic smelling of it, and that led into literally all of his background. And he found the name was misspelled, I think, 7 times. It was ridiculous. And it makes sense, but that family history could cut off on the fact, and we never knew why. I mean, he would sit there when he wasn't sleeping and into it, he would say, why did they not, did the person spell Charbonneau incorrectly? Did my own family not know the name? He knew their first names and if they had kids, so he could back it up from there. But yeah, not knowing that the person taking the information just thought, well, that looks good enough, we're going to go on. That's fantastic, Carolyn. Thank you for letting everybody know that. So Ellis Island, because of this misspelled name situation and accents, like I know my grandmother had a brogue and they didn't understand her birthday or her name. What about Ellis Island, which she came through? Do they misspell those names, or are those names accurate?
Those names are accurate in the beginning because their names are on the ship manifest that they came over on. But they may have Americanized their names themselves after they got here so that they would be more accepted. I had a German grandmother, and her maiden name was Bar. She spelled it B-A-R-R. But as we got into the research, we learned on the ship's manifest, the family's name was spelled B-A-H-R. But it pointed them out as Germans, and so they wanted it to look more American.
Wow. Yeah, and pronunciation, not only acceptance, but I know even pronunciation.
Right.
Both sides of my family, Irish and the French, they did that so people could say the name. They got tired of spelling it, which I do myself every day. But man, we're going to be back with you, Carolyn. Carolyn's got a great theory about your genealogy and past life, so you got to hang on for this. This is a very talented Carolyn B Leonard. She's just releasing a book coming up, The First 100 Years. We'll be back.
What started as a love letter to her son has become an international love letter for all parents to their children. Now you can read acclaimed author Shanalee Sharboneau's story to your children. When her son was very sick, she calmed him by singing her own song to him. She turned that song into the book, My Mama Loves Me, I'm Her Little Boy. She wrote 3 more magical books for all parents and kids 6 and under. Available at Indie Lecter, Amazon, and all local and national outlets.
Hello, I am the author and poet Denise Bryson. I am the author of The Things That Cross My Mind, Love's Reality, both in book and audio form. I am also noted as one of the best poets of 2011. I have 2 new projects coming up. One is the Blinky series, where Blinky tells us all about our coins and our bills for our children. I also have a book coming out called Say Ye. It's quotes from Denise Bryson, just inspirational and that will help you along the way.
Thank you for watching or listening to this show. Indie Lecter is proud to sponsor this programming. As a thank you for listening or watching, we would like to give you a 10% coupon code that you can use on our bookstore at indielecter.store. Use coupon code video19. Again, that's indielecter.store, coupon code video19 for a 10% discount on any purchase. Thank you.
Welcome back to Indie Beacon Radio. Don't forget to like us, follow.
Good evening, y'all. This is your radio show host for this evening, Shanalee Sharboneau. We're not going to spell that because obviously it was incorrect on the consensus or the census data, as Carolyn has pointed out. But we are back with the very talented author, Carolyn B Leonard. Welcome back, Carolyn.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Oh man, so am I. I mean, you have really opened, and we thought we were on it. So for you to really give some insights to, what people are doing here. So I had opened up to you about how the fact that now with all this ancestry, we've actually, my husband and I found out, and that's not the important thing, but I want to hear your theory on past lives. But I told you, I knew I was Irish and French, and my husband thought I was French. He found out I was French and Irish. And we have found out that both sides of our family have been from exactly the same towns in France, exactly the same towns in Canada. We know both of our parents lived in the Midwest. Both of our parents moved to Texas. And just in the last 2 months, we found out we're from the same small 10,000 person town in Ireland called Cork. So we're like fourth cousins is what we're thinking at this point. And thank God my son came out beautiful, because that's too crazy. But in sharing that, you had a really interesting theory. What is that theory?
Well, I'm not sure we should go there, but we will.
I'd love to, because I think it'd get people thinking. And I think families move together too. You know what I mean? I think ours is an extreme case, but I'm sure other people have found this out. Something connects them. But go. This is really good.
For those people who believe in reincarnation, they believe that you keep being reborn into the same family so that you can correct any of the errors that you made in a previous life. So you might be the mother of the next generation, you might be the child in the next generation, you might be a grandparent. And like you said, families do move together. I have this one line ancestry that is from Holland, from the Netherlands. The first one came in 1634 with the Dutch West Indies, and they were in New Amsterdam. And they were Dutch, so they spoke a different language. So there's a real interesting thing about the names, trying to figure out, well, like Koning was one name, Koning. That name became King.
Wow.
K-I-N-G. There's one named Crownover, Crownover, became Conley. And so you just have to catch every little thing and watch, and you finally figure out, oh, that's that person. And the spelling just changed. Also, when they first came to New Amsterdam, they only had one name. Then when the English came in and took over, they had to have a second name. So before the English took over, like my ancestor's name was Cosine Jansen. He was the son of Jan. And then his boys were named, all of them named their first son Cornelius. So the first one was Cornelius, Cosine's son. So you see, you lose that family name in about the second or third generation. So then when the English came in, I think it's 1764, they required the citizens to take a second name and make that their family name and stay with it. So my Dutch family chose Cosine, but the spelling has changed a lot. It was Cosyn, I believe, in the beginning, and now it's Cozine.
Wow.
It's challenging, but it's fun.
Well, your story is very powerful in understanding, how these things happened and how this gets lost. And I think it's almost like creative fodder for people of their own family to sit down and really think about, what their culture was known for and how that changes. Pretty, very, very powerful stuff. It's really amazing. I think it's obviously now I've learned I didn't learn my mistake, and I'm going to be up all night thinking about what you're saying. But that's okay. It's not like it's different than any other night, but more so tonight, I'm sure. So your book, you're coming out with this great book. It's called The First 100 Years. Can you kind of give the full title and what it's about? And there it is behind you. So
yes, and there's a big one behind me too.
Yeah.
It's the first 100 years in America. The first book I did was Who's Your Daddy, which got people started on genealogy. Well, then once you get going, you want to write a story about your family. So this book, The First 100 Years, is to help you And it's written in 10-year periods because each census was 10 years. So each chapter in the book is 10 years. There's 10 chapters. And when you're writing your family history, you kind of think, well, I wonder why they made that decision at that time to move or change careers or something. And you can go to that period of time in this book, First 100 Years, and figure that out. There was a good reason why they may have. It may have been a depression in the country, or the bank failures affected a lot of things.
Wow. And why did you decide to do this book? What was the fuel for this one for you?
Well, I'm very selfish. I started writing my own family history, and it was so confusing as I write. I'd think, well, I wonder why in that period they decided to do this. For instance, in 1800, they moved, this one line of my family who were English moved from Massachusetts to the wilds of Northwest Territory. And I thought, why on earth would they leave all those conveniences to go to a part of the country where they might be killed by the Indians?
Yeah.
Well, as I studied it more, I learned the man of the house was a Revolutionary War veteran, and they could get bounty land there in the Northwest Territory. Oh, that's the Ohio, Indiana, that area at that time.
Wow. Which answers, there's certain pockets of cultures in the United States. I think it's kind of changing, but I think it started, probably still today, but it started with the promise of land. It's almost like a marketing tactic they did. They went to these, countries or these cultures and said, come on over, go here. And that's what started this whole great American, history and dream, if you will. So wow, that's awesome. So your book, when is it going to be available and where?
The launch date is December 15th.
Oh, great.
But it may be available sooner than that on Amazon.com. And I'll have a big signing, which we're going to talk about in the next segment.
Yeah.
Come to think of it. But it'll be available on Amazon.com or from my website. And if they contact me, I'll sign it and send it to them.
Oh, that's great. What's your website, dear?
www.carolynbleonard.com.
Wonderful. So what do you think, are there tidbits, just because I think we got so addicted to Who's Your Daddy, are there tidbits in this new book, The First 100 Years, that will kind of help people with their own stories?
Oh, yes, that's the purpose of it. And as you follow the census and know what to look for in the different 10-year periods, you'll learn so much about your family, and it'll help you write your story.
Wow.
The stories of the presidents is usually one of the favorites of my readers, because sometimes I think our country survived not so much because of great leadership, but because of God's grace.
That's the truth. Again, just coming from a family that spoke verbally a lot about history, just because, Ireland did have such a tumultuous, because they are hard-headed, which I can tell you happens in this house, background. It is critical to know what history did, like your family, the English coming in and changing names. I'm sure there's, a lot of native Indian cultures that had to change their names, and hopefully changing back or recording it enough to do it. So it's a very powerful statement to know, how they did the name. You talked about the son of. My maiden name, the Mick, and all the Irish name means the son of, and a lot of people don't know that. So we're, as a Mick, and you have to learn that in time, so in Ireland I was an A, in America I was an M, until obviously I changed to a longer name, which I don't know if that was better or worse. But yeah, it's that history can, I really believe you're totally right, can totally jog your brain and really kind of think about your own family history and give you clues on what they had to do for the time, whether it's to be accepted it was forced upon them, like the English, what a great way to really understand what was going on and how they survived. So, but yeah, I want to take the last break, Carolyn. I could talk to you all night, but we're gonna be back with Carolyn B Leonard, author of a new release coming out no later than December 15th, The First 100 Years.
What would you do if you had to put your life on hold to care for a loved one? I'm Charlotte Kenyon, award-winning author of the book, You Have to Laugh to Keep from Crying, How to Parent Your Parents. That was a question I had to ask myself some 16 years ago, and you'll have to ask the same question. I had a father-in-law with dementia, a mother with Alzheimer's, and a dad with Parkinson, all at the same time.
What would you do if you found out everyone on the town council were thieves and murderers? That's what happened in Bandera, Texas in 1873. John Cruder was the marshal, yet he needed to operate outside the law in order to balance the scales of justice. He is the Midnight Marauder. You can find his books on Amazon.com and TopWesterns.com in paperback, digital, and audio. I'm Roy Clinton, and I hope you'll read The Midnight Marauder.
Welcome back to Indie Beacon Radio. Don't forget to like us, follow us, or subscribe to one of our many channels. Now, here is your host for today's show.
Welcome back. Well, we are talking to the very interesting Carolyn B Leonard, author of the new upcoming book, The First 100 Years. Welcome back, Carolyn.
Thank you, Shanalee.
Sure. So we know the book's coming out no later than December 15th. It's available on your website, Carolyn B Leonard, and Carolyn, of course, Carolyn, just in case there's somebody thinking Caroline, but Carolyn Leonard, BLeonard.com. Are you going to be anywhere speaking? Where can people talk to you? Because I think if they get there, they would want to bend your ear for probably a good hour.
Well, if they're in this area, on December the 8th, Sunday, December the 8th, I'll be signing books in Edmond, Oklahoma from 1 to 5 at the Seventh-day Adventist Church, which is in North Edmond. They're having a craft fair, and I'm one of their guests. And then we'll have a special signing at Full Circle Books in Oklahoma City in 50 Penn Place soon after the first of the year.
Oh, wow. That's exciting. That's awesome. So yes, if y'all are in the Oklahoma area, if you're a Texan, you'll drive to Oklahoma, no problem. Oklahoma's tiny compared to Texas. So, but if you were anywhere near, I would definitely see this woman. So, what's more for Carolyn? I mean, I just think you've got so much to offer. I mean, this book is going to keep you busy. What if you had one legacy, what would you want that to be other than, impressing the heck out of me?
Well, I've got to do the second century, bring it from 1900 to 1970. So I've got that one started. But the one I'm excited about and can't wait to get to is the true story about a Cheyenne Indian girl that was captured by Custer at the Ouachita Massacre in 1868. I've had that book going for 20 years and I keep thinking, okay, I'm going to get it done this year, but then something else comes up and I have to do it first. I do want to say though, if anybody would like to write and ask me questions, I do respond. I'd be happy to hear from them. And my email address is buffalo, buffalo 234 @cox.net.
Wow, boy, you just opened up your email box. That's for sure.
No spam, just genealogy questions.
Well, honestly, Carolyn, I just, first off, I want to thank you for doing, I know you have to do the second half, but I think what you did was more critical. I mean, I think some of us are a little bit older and we probably have a little bit more memory of what's occurred or what occurred with our parents or grandparents. So that's a little covered, even though it should be recorded. Do you think people should tape their elders? I mean, is there a way to kind of make this fun, even for kids? As everybody knows, I have a 9-year-old. I mean, how do you make this fun for people?
Oh, they'll love it. I taught a class in my hometown and had the kids do their genealogy. And of course, it was a little touchy because one little girl came to me and she said, "I'm adopted. Which family should I do? Or what should I do about that?" And I said, "Well, you just decide which one you want to do and do that one first, and then you can do the other one second."
Oh man, I want to end on that because I think that's a very powerful message. And in a time where we always think that we need to make just one choice and everything's black and white, that's a beautiful sentiment, Carolyn. I really appreciate that. We are talking to the wonderful Carolyn B Leonard. She is the author of The First 100 Years, coming out December 15th. Y'all get it for Christmas. It won't be a bad gift. It'll be a great gift. This is your radio show host for this evening, Shanalee Sharboneau. Peace out. Y'all have a wonderful Merry Christmas. Bye.
Thank you for listening to Indie Beacon Radio, where creative souls can find help in marketing their creations. To learn more about Indie Beacon services, to be a guest on the show, or to advertise on our show, please visit our website at indiebeacon.com.